When my grandmother passed away, she left me her farmhouse. It sat on 5 acres of empty Pennsylvania land, quiet, isolated, and half forgotten. I hadn't been there in almost 15 years. When I was a kid, that house used to scare me, not because of ghosts or stories, but because it always felt too alive. The floorboards creaked even when no one was moving. The old radio turned itself on sometimes, and at night, my grandmother would sit on the porch and talk to someone who wasn't there. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd smile and say, "The house likes company, dear." I thought she was joking. I wish she had been. When she died, I drove up from Philadelphia to handle the estate, clean things out, sign papers, maybe sell it. The road to the farmhouse was long and unpaved, surrounded by trees that leaned close like they were eavesdropping. It was late October. Orange leaves everywhere, the sky bruised with rain. As soon as I saw the house, a strange feeling hit me, like it had been waiting. The porch light was on, but there was no power in the house. Inside, everything smelled like dust and old wood. Her rocking chair still faced the window. Her tea set was out, one cup still half full, covered in mold. I found her bedroom, neat and untouched, except for one thing: the old rotary phone on her nightstand. It was ringing. Once. Twice. I picked it up. "Hello?" Nothing. Then, faintly, almost too soft to hear, a woman's voice. "You came back!" I slammed the phone down and told myself it was just a crossed line, maybe static interference, but I unplugged the phone anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. The ticking of the wall clock, the groaning of the rafters, the faint rustle of something in the walls. At one point, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate steps across the floorboards of the room above mine. The room that used to be mine when I was a kid. I grabbed a flashlight and went up. The door creaked open. The room was empty, but the smell, that musty floral perfume my grandmother always wore, filled the air. On the dresser sat an old photograph of her and me from years ago. Only, it was different now. In the background, behind our smiling faces, was a faint shape, a tall, dark outline of someone standing in the window. I didn't remember anyone being there, and I swear, when I blinked, that dark shape seemed a little closer. I shoved the photo face down and left the room. The next morning, I found something strange on the kitchen table. A teacup. Clean, fresh, still steaming. And beside it, a small note written in my grandmother's handwriting. "I'm glad you came home." My heart dropped. I hadn't written it. And I hadn't made any tea. Over the next few days, things got worse. Doors opened on their own. The smell of her perfume followed me wherever I went. And every night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the rotary phone rang, even though it wasn't plugged in. When I finally answered, the voice on the other end whispered my name. "Evan." I didn't respond. I just listened. "You shouldn't have left me alone." Then came the sound of the rocking chair creaking from the porch. I ran to the window and saw it moving slowly back and forth, but no one was sitting in it. On the 5th night, I decided to leave. I packed my bags, grabbed my keys, and headed for the front door. But when I reached it, it was locked. The deadbolt, the chain, the knob, all locked from the inside. I hadn't touched them. I turned, and every light in the house flickered. The clock stopped ticking. And that voice, Her voice whispered right beside my ear. "You belong here now." The next thing I remembered, I was outside, on the ground, my ears ringing. It was morning. The front door was wide open behind me. I drove away and never went back. A few months later, I got a call from the realtor. They'd sent someone to inspect the house before listing it. He found a body sitting in the old rocking chair, decomposed, unrecognizable. The coroner said it had been there for years. But here's the thing. My grandmother's body was cremated. So whoever or whatever was sitting in that chair, it wasn't her.
I've never believed in haunted objects. That kind of stuff always sounded like something from bad horror movies. Cursed dolls, mirrors that trap souls, that kind of thing. But I do now, because of the mirror I bought from apartment 313. I had just moved to a new city for work. Cheap apartment, old building, creaky floors, the kind of place that looked better in photos than in person. I didn't have much furniture, so one Saturday morning I went to an estate sale 2 blocks down. Most of it was junk, old lamps, chipped plates, dusty books, until I saw it. A tall, ornate mirror leaning against the wall. It was beautiful. Antique gold frame, hand-carved floral edges, glass still clean and uncracked despite its age. The woman running the sale smiled when I pointed at it. "That one's from apartment 313, she said. "Last tenant didn't take much with her, just left this behind." Her tone shifted slightly when she said that, cautious, like she didn't want to say more. I paid $40 and carried it home. My apartment had one bare wall, so I hung the mirror there that afternoon. It immediately changed the whole vibe of the room, made it feel brighter somehow, warmer. For a while, I even felt calmer when I looked at it. Until that night. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the faint sound of knocking. 3 slow knocks, coming from somewhere in my apartment. I got up thinking it was the neighbor, thin walls, maybe someone drunk or confused. But the sound wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from the mirror. I stood there half awake, staring at it. And as I watched, I swear I saw movement. Not my reflection, something behind me in the glass. A dark figure, tall and still. When I turned around, nothing. The room was empty. But when I looked back at the mirror, there were handprints on the inside of the glass. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just sleep deprivation, moving stress, bad lighting, whatever. I cleaned the mirror. The glass felt oddly cold, like it had been refrigerated. That night, it happened again, knocking 3 times. I didn't move this time. I just watched. And slowly, the reflection began to change. The walls behind me in the glass looked different, older, dirtier. And my reflection, it wasn't copying me anymore. When I blinked, it didn't. When I tilted my head, it smiled. I tore the mirror off the wall and shoved it face down against the floor. But even then, I could hear faint knocking from behind it. Over the next few days, things got worse. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye, a shape standing in the mirror's reflection, even when it was faced toward the wall. Sometimes I'd wake up and find it upright again, perfectly centered against the wall, even though I hadn't touched it. And every morning, there would be new fingerprints on the glass, smudged from the inside. I finally called the building manager. When I mentioned the mirror, he went quiet. "You said that came from 313? Why?" He hesitated. "We don't rent that unit anymore. It's been closed off since last year." "Why?" Tenant was a woman, lived alone. People said she started acting strange, talking to herself, staying up all night, staring into her mirror. Then one morning she didn't answer her door. Police broke in and found her." He trailed off. found her sitting in front of that same mirror. She had written something on the glass in lipstick. What did it say? "She's behind me." That night, I wrapped the mirror in a blanket and left it in the hallway. I planned to throw it out in the morning. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound that froze my blood. Knocking. Not from the hallway this time, from inside my room. 3 slow knocks. When I turned toward the door, I could see light bleeding in from the hallway. Dim, flickering, like candlelight. And on the floor, under my door, a shadow moved. Someone was standing there. I grabbed my phone and whispered through the door, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, just barely audible, a voice, soft, trembling, feminine. "Please don't let her back in." Before I could say anything, the lights in my room flickered and died. When they came back on, the door was open, just a crack, and the mirror was standing upright inside my room again. There was something different about the reflection now. The room behind the glass looked darker, like it was lit by candlelight, and there was a woman standing behind me in it. Pale skin, long black hair covering her face, her hand pressed flat against the glass. And then, slowly, a second hand appeared, then a third, then another. Dozens of pale hands pressing against the inside of the mirror, all clawing, pushing, smearing the glass from within, until the woman's face lifted just enough for me to see one clouded, lifeless eye, and her mouth moved. "You looked too long." I don't remember what happened next. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The fire department said someone reported smoke from my apartment. They found me unconscious. No fire, no burns, but the entire wall where the mirror had hung was charred black. The mirror itself was gone. Not shattered, gone. The maintenance team swore they'd never seen it, and the unit above me, apartment 313, still sealed shut. But sometimes, when I walk past that floor, I can see faint light flickering under the door, and the faintest outline of my reflection moving long after I've walked away.
I used to take the train every day for work. Same route, same time, same tired faces staring out the windows. I'm not the kind of person who believes in ghosts or cursed places, but what happened one October night changed that forever, because I rode a train that doesn't exist anymore. It was late, around 11:45 p.m., and I just missed my usual train home. The station was almost empty, just a handful of people scattered along the platform. The next train wasn't supposed to arrive until midnight, but at 11:52, I heard it. The deep, metallic screech of wheels, the low hum of a motor, and then headlights cutting through the fog. The display board didn't show it. No route number, no destination, just the sound of the brakes hissing as the train came to a stop. The doors slid open with a slow "tsh," and I stepped inside. It looked like every other old commuter train, yellowed lights, scratched walls, the faint smell of rust and oil. But there was something off. The seats were covered in dust, every window was fogged from the inside, and there was no one, no conductor, no passengers. I almost stepped back out, but before I could, the doors closed. The train jolted forward, and we were moving. At first I thought maybe I'd boarded an out-of-service train by mistake, but then I noticed the lights outside. We weren't passing through the usual stations, just endless tunnels lit by flickering orange bulbs. No signs, no exits. I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. The clock was frozen at 11:57. I started walking toward the next car, calling out, "Hello? Anyone working?" My voice echoed, but there was no answer. Then I heard something, a soft whisper. It sounded like a woman's voice, faint,
coming from one of the back seats. "Miss!" I called out. The whisper stopped. When I turned the corner into the next car, I saw her, a woman sitting alone facing the window. Her head was tilted slightly downward, long dark hair covering her face. Her hands were clasped together in her lap, perfectly still. I stepped closer. "Excuse me? Do you know when this train stops?" No response. Just the rhythmic clacking of the tracks beneath us. I moved another step forward and realized her reflection in the window was facing me. That's when the lights flickered. For half a second, the car went pitch black, and when the lights came back on, the woman was gone. But her reflection was still there. It stared at me through the glass, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Then the window cracked, spiderwebbing outward from where her face had been. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Every instinct told me to get off that train, but it wasn't slowing down. I ran toward the front car. Every door I passed made the same metallic groan, and each car was different, like they belonged to different decades. One looked like it was from the 1970s, green leather seats and brass poles. The next one looked brand new, LED lights and digital displays. The next was completely burned out. Soot covered the walls, seats melted and blackened. The air smelled like old smoke and iron. In the reflection of the glass doors, I could see figures, blurry silhouettes sitting in the seats, their heads slowly turning toward me. When I turned around, nothing, but their reflections remained. Finally, I reached the conductor's cabin. The door was slightly open. I pushed it, and the hinges screamed. There was no conductor, just an old dust-covered control panel and a single handwritten note taped above it. It said, "Do not stop. Do not look back." I looked out the front window. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, no turns, no exits. Then I heard footsteps behind me, slow, heavy, getting closer. I turned around and saw a man standing at the far end of the car. He was wearing a uniform, an old train conductor's outfit, faded and torn. His face was pale, skin sagging slightly, and his eyes were completely black. He lifted one shaking hand and pointed at me. "You shouldn't be here." Before I could speak, the train lurched violently. I hit the floor hard. When I looked up, the conductor was gone. But outside the window, through the tunnel lights, I could see faces pressed against the glass, dozens of them, mouths open, eyes hollow. They weren't riding the train, they were in the walls. The lights flickered again, once, twice, then died completely. The sound of the train faded until all I could hear was whispering, dozens of voices, some crying, some laughing, some begging. "Don't look back. You saw her reflection. It's too late now." Then, suddenly, there was a violent screech, metal grinding against metal. The train was stopping. When the doors opened, I bolted out into the darkness. I was in a tunnel. No station, no signs, no exits. Just damp concrete and flickering lights overhead. The train behind me began to move again. I turned, trying to read the number or route on the back, but there was nothing. Just one cracked window, and through it I saw that same woman, sitting in her seat, head tilted, watching me as the train vanished into the dark. I walked for what felt like hours before I found an emergency exit ladder that led up to the surface. When I finally got out, I was miles from where I should have been. The nearest working station was closed. The security guard stared when I told him what happened. He said, "That line's been shut down for years. There hasn't been a train through that tunnel since the fire in '97. Fire? I asked. He nodded. Faulty wiring. Whole train went up before it could stop. Everyone on board, gone. He pointed at the faded newspaper clippings on the wall of his booth. I leaned in to read, and there, among the faces of the victims, was the woman I'd seen in the reflection. Now, I don't take the train anymore, but every once in a while, when I'm driving past the old station late at night, I hear the faint sound of screeching brakes echoing underground, and if you stand still long enough, you can feel a vibration under your feet, like something passing just beneath you. Some say it's just the pipes, but sometimes, when the wind's right, you can hear the whisper of a conductor's voice drifting up from below. Don't look back.